So, I have a major problem with Obsidian games, and that problem is how they choose to narrate things. This could just be a me thing, but The Outer Worlds 2 is the second Obsidian game I've played this year where I hated how they presented information in the game. I say all of this because recently I decided to play The Outer Worlds 2, and it's a really good game. Obsidian are in their bag with this one, improving on most things from The Outer Worlds 1. However, just like Avowed, The Outer Worlds 2 feels like it is so close to being something great, but just doesn't hit the nail on the head. And like I said before, this could just be a me issue, but it is something that has been bothering me for a while. And I just need to express my frustration with the lack of cutscenes for the amount of narration the game has. But before I even delve into that, let me talk about everything else that I liked and disliked in The Outer Worlds 2. The Outer Worlds 2 represents a significant evolution in Obsidian Entertainment's sci-fi RPG series, building on the satirical foundation established in its 2019 predecessor, The Outer Worlds 1, while introducing enhanced narrative depth and gameplay mechanics. The story revolves around the player's role as an Earth Directorate agent, a semi-militarized force combating corporate tyrannies and authoritarian regimes, deployed to Arcadia to probe the rift anomalies disturbing interstellar trade, forcing us to navigate alliances and betrayals in a war-torn colony. This setup amplifies the satirical tone inherited from the original, critiquing themes of authority, fate, and capitalism, but with a darker edge that reflects real-world complexities. The game's bigger and better ethos manifests in reactive worlds where player actions alter faction dynamics, radio broadcasts, and territorial control, fostering replayability through moral ambiguity. By relocating to Arcadia, a system rich and isolated from Earth's influence, the sequel expands the universe without invalidating prior player choices, ensuring narrative continuity while exploring fresh conflicts. So, that's just a quick look at what the general idea of The Outer Worlds 2 is. Now, let's get into the actual game itself. First up is your character. The character creation and progression systems in The Outer Worlds 2 is unfortunately very strict, in the sense that it emphasizes permanent decisions and specialized builds to enhance role-playing depth. Unlike the original game, where attributes and grouped skills allowed for broader customizations with respec options, the sequel streamlines progression by removing attributes entirely and focuses on individual skills, traits, and perks that lock in after the introductory mission. This shift aims to create meaningful character differentiation, encouraging players to commit to specific playstyles from the outset. For example, I decided to do what I usually do with every single Obsidian game. I went for a build that allows me to talk no jutsu out of everything possible, with a bit of luck, because it's a feature that seemed new, and I expect something like that to be effective in some form. And it didn't disappoint. Early into my playthrough, I lacked a lot of skills that would have been helpful with progressing through quests, which is something The Outer Worlds 2 wants you to experience. That feeling of, I should have went for another build so I could pass this random skill check. When in reality, no matter what build you went for, there is something you would have missed out on, especially in the early game. But back to my main point on the luck trait, which is a cheat code for some interactions, because if there is a chance to use that trait, you are guaranteed to pass a skill check with flying colors. But the chances to use it is pretty rare. For example, I was doing the main storyline, and because of the luck trait, I was able to use a third option that probably wouldn't have been available to me if I didn't have that trait. The ability to customize your playthrough or character is one of the best features of The Outer Worlds 2, but I would appreciate having some pre-made builds for new and casual players, to be honest. With so many options available, it can be overwhelming, especially when you aren't able to respec your build or character. I wish there was a way to increase proficiency in skills outside of using skill points, especially for combat skills like guns and melee weapons. Also, the skill system is way more complex than I'm giving it credit for. Since I went for the speech skill, I can talk no jutsu out of a lot of things, but it also has a trait that does more damage to humans the more points I put into the skill. Though I was tickling NPCs at the beginning because I had no skill points in any combat, as I leveled up more, I did decent damage for someone who doesn't have any skill points in guns or melee combat. But what do you think about the character creation and the skill system in the Outer Worlds 2? I think the inability to respec after the prologue is a decision I disagree with as a player who wants to experience everything without having to use guides or replay hours of progression. Gameplay has seen the biggest improvement for me. Exploration in the Outer Worlds 2 is fundamentally reimagined through expansive planetary regions and enhanced mobility tools, creating a sense of discovery that rewards curiosity over mundane progression. Unlike the original's more contained hubs, the sequel features way more expansive worlds. Mobility improvements further encouraged fluid exploration, introducing run, slide, and double jump mechanics that made exploration intuitive and engaging. Sliding and running enhances momentum-based traversal, since you pretty much run everywhere and you just take the ship to travel between planets. Which I'm on the fence with about the whole running around stuff, but I guess it wouldn't make sense having vehicles because the world isn't actually, the planets aren't big enough to require vehicles, but it's small enough to notice that you're running from location to location. But it's a nothing burger realistically. Simple things like being able to mantle onto objects and slide are such net positives, especially in modern gaming. These features not only help mitigate the monotony of planetary navigation, but also amplify gameplay, making exploration and combat way more fun. And trust me when I say this, exploration is one of the most important things you should be doing in the Outer Worlds 2. You can randomly come across unique weapons, gear, and collectibles that increase stats to your character. The game wants you to explore areas and buildings outside of the quest lines and rewards you for doing just that. However, the biggest downgrade to me are the companions. They are the most frustrating feature the game has. They went from being pivotal in the Outer Worlds 1 into being literal deadweight in 2. In every single combat I engage in, I can guarantee that both of my companions are going to be dead, especially if they are melee focused. They run into enemies Leroy Jenkins style and die instantly because melee is low-key trash in this game. And the best part is you can't heal. You can't heal them while in combat. And if you want to revive them, you need to hope they are in cover, because if they aren't, damage would knock you out of that reviving animation. And you would probably end up dead, depending on your build, I guess. And since we're on companions, you aren't able to equip them with gear anymore, and their upgrades have been seriously simplified into uselessness. Now, it could be that they require leadership skill to enhance their usefulness, but I wouldn't know because I can't respec, so I can't even test that out. And my build doesn't utilize leadership skills, apparently. Either way, companions have been grossly nerfed and frustrating to play with. But a feature I liked, but I think is underrated, is that gear can be useful from level 1 all the way to level 20. In other words, gear levels don't exist, thus making skills and perks way more important, while gear gives you special traits. At first I hated it because I didn't know what gear was better. I started liking it way more because I can run any gear I want and still be effective in combat, which isn't saying a lot because my build is a talk no jutsu build. Outside of whatever they did with companions, I would say that the gameplay has seen massive improvements in a positive direction when compared to The Outer Worlds 1. And next up are the factions. I would say these are important, but I'll just give a general gist, just so I don't spoil anything really. As an Earth Directorate agent, you're stuck in the middle of three ideological different powers: the Protectorate, Auntie's Choice, and the Order of the Ascent, each controlling territories and ideologies that clash amid the crisis. And every choice shifts how they see you. The Protectorate, an authoritarian military regime, enforcing order through obedience, viewing rifts as threats to stability. Their militarized settlements on the planets feature propaganda and strict hierarchies. Auntie's Choice, a hyper-capitalistic merger of prior corporations, which, if you played The Outer Worlds 1, is a very popular corporation you will remember. Dominates planets with consumerist propaganda, treating rifts as profit opportunities. And the Order of the Ascent, rogue scientists blending faith and math, controls planets, interpreting rifts as keys of the universal equation. And finally, there's a fourth sub-faction. It's a hidden one, I'm not gonna spoil it. Ultimately, Arcadia's survival, or downfall, mirrors player values, underscoring Obsidian's prowess in creating worlds where humor tempers tragedy and agency defines legacy. Which is cool and all, but one thing I'm on the fence with is the fact that you have to interact with every single NPC. Because you don't know who has information, quests, or items, so every time you enter a new city or town, you could spend 10 to 20 minutes interacting with NPCs. I'm on the fence with this because it can be pretty mundane. On the first planet, almost everyone had something important to tell you. But as you progress, you're just running from person to person. I like that the world feels alive, but sometimes it feels like busy work, like the game's padding its depth with dialogue. And here's where my biggest problem comes in. Obsidian's narration. They rely so heavily on exposition and off-screen storytelling that it kills the immersion. I will use The Witcher 3 as an example of what I believe Obsidian should include in their games. Just cutscenes of scripted dialogue from NPCs showing what they're talking about. So many emotional or story critical moments are just told to you, not shown. And yes, I know there are some cutscenes, but sometimes I wish there was more. With the amount of dialogue I've come across, I don't just want to be making eye contact with the NPCs as they explain to me why I should help them with a problem. Obsidian are masters of writing. There's no question about that. But sometimes I want to see the world they built, not just read or listen to it. Outside of that, great game. All in all, I've put in about 46 hours of gameplay in The Outer Worlds 2 since its release, and what I've learned from this is that the game is an RPG game, not an action RPG game like the Borderlands games. And that was the biggest disconnect for me. I am not the most powerful or omnipotent thing. I'm just a regular person. And that's weird because it's a game, yeah, but like Outer Worlds 2 makes you feel like a regular person in a universe. You don't feel like an omnipotent god controlling a character. You feel like the character you're playing. Weak. Vulnerable. And that's an art, and it's something I'll always respect Obsidian for doing, because not many games do that. So, have you played The Outer Worlds 2? Do you plan to? And if you did, do you feel the same way about Obsidian's narration style as I do? Or am I just nitpicking it because of my ADHD? Let me know in the comments down below, and be sure to like and subscribe.